Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So today's video is my final thoughts on the Litehawk Brute. So this will be the last video on this, other than when I get a chance to get out to the track and actually shoot some video and beating it up on a track. Anyhow, overall quality of this machine is actually really good. Very pleased with it. Now, we've talked about this in other videos, that this is actually the exact same as the WL Toys L969, okay, as far as monster truck to monster truck goes. So, you've got the same machine. Anyways, I've had this one for a little bit now, not too long, and I've done a bit of beating to it, as far as a lot of full throttling, spinning the daylights out of the tires. I've done a few different adjustments to the suspension, one of which today I decided to try out, and that's moving the back H-arms, or A-arms, lower arms, down onto the bottom, because they're normally set up one level. So I set them all the way down to the bottom to level them out with the fronts, and I still have adjustability where I can change things around a little bit. So I'm still kind of, playing with it here and there a little at a time. I also altered my front suspension, and I put the shocks all the way to the furthest point out, which does actually, keep this thing running soft, but I find it is actually helping as far as roll and dig goes, so it's giving a lot more traction with the front shocks set up this way. However, when you set your back A or H arms to where they are now here with them flush on these holes, what I am finding is I'm going to be losing a bit of traction on the rear, so I'm going to have to actually readjust those and knock them actually back down to where they started at factory setup. There is tunability on this thing for your suspension, to a degree. And you can actually use preload spacers if you can find them that fit the shocks. I found that the HSP Ghost and Litehawk Igniter suspension clips will actually fit onto these shock tubes once you pull the spring down out of the way. And they're a little bit of an overstretch for the clip, but they do work really well. So, and you can set up, 1 or 2 or 3, whatever you want to do to stiffen up that rear end. Now, with it set up like this, on the H-arms at the bottom, you're not going to bottom out. There's no chance of bottom out now on your back end for any kind of chassis slap. So that has a good point to it that way. So you're going to be able to get a little bit more performance there, especially for jumping setups and whatnot. You don't want to move your shocks outward on the bottom end where they are adjustable, because that's just going to make you squat down a little bit more. So you want to try and get as much ride height as you can get. But for jumping wise, it's going to be a good setup the way it is right now. But as far as road running goes, you're going to lose a little bit of traction into the rear end. So you got to kind of be aware of that, because in a way you're kind of stiffening this a little bit, which lightens your rear end when you stiffen it up. When it has a chance to suck down, it gives it a chance to dig in more. And these tires are really good, just the way they are. They are actually really decent tires. But you're going to have to play around with different terrains and see what the best setup for each terrain is with you, with the vehicle, and how you're driving it. Now, these motors can toast if you don't break them in properly, so that's something you want to make sure that when you first buy this thing off the shelf, give it a couple battery runs, really super slow running. It may sound boring as heck, but it's going to save the life of this motor. And then you can start to, gun it more often. I've been going upwards to 6 and 8 seconds now. I'll do one run and then just slow it down and then do another burn like that. I did it about a half a dozen times, and my motor temperature is actually running pretty decent, even after a good 20 minutes of running on it. it's doing really well. So breaking in that motor is definitely a very important thing. And because you're going to be probably near a lot of light duty sand kicking up, every time you're done playing with this, or every second time, take an air compressor hose and clean all the dust out that you can and sand, because it's going to get in, and it can get into the motor vent holes here too. So you want to blow that stuff all clean out. And maybe every few runs, I'd say, I don't know, maybe half a dozen runs at most, take your gearbox apart and make sure there's no sand in there, because it is able to get in actually through your differential cups. So you'll want to make sure you keep as much sand out of your inside as possible. Re-grease it all with fresh clean grease. Slap her all back together and away you go. So it's not a whole ton of maintenance, but when you're looking at a car that's a split between a toy grade and a hobby grade, there's a certain amount of maintenance you should do to it if you want it to last with very few breakdowns. Okay, you're still going to get the odd breakdown that can happen depending on how rough you are with it, but otherwise, if you treat it fairly good, it's going to treat you good back. Now today, I ended up having to change my one gear inside the transmission. This is a speed reduction gear, and this larger diameter area is actually what meshes up against the motor's brass pinion. And after doing a bunch of abuse for flooring it and, you know, kicking it into reverse real quick, which, you know, putting it into reverse is actually your brakes, so I would do it gently, not roughly, because you do it enough times and you're going to start shredding your gear. So if you want to avoid shredding that gear apart, you know, get extra life out of it, don't slam it into reverse. And when you do go into reverse, be gentle on the trigger, don't be rough on it, or you're definitely going to strip some teeth. And I mean, this thing was still running, but it would make a horrible sound, and then it would finally, you know, move and kick back in and run, but still, that's hard on the brass pinion to catch that dead spot and then skip in. When the motor's running fast, you don't want to do that too often. So, but these gears are cheap. It's about $5 from Litehawk for. It'll actually give you a new top differential area gear, as well as this one. And this is really the only one you need to worry too much about, unless you've done damage into this gear, in which case you will have done some damage at the same time to your differential main top gear. Just so you know what I'm talking about, I'll just grab it here. So this is your differential that's inside the transmission box, and this larger tooth gear here sits in like this. So it sits like this inside the gearbox, and then your motor pinion gear will be up against this area, and there's a pin that goes through here that holds this gear in place. So your mesh, you really have no mesh to set, which is great. The other thing is when you do take this apart to clean it, blow all the sand out of here and throw some oil onto your bearing, because these bearings can actually trap and suck in some dust. So you'll want to clean those out as best as you can, and, you know, run them until they just die, you know, and then get a whole new differential or get a new set of bearings. No big deal. But when you buy the gear set, to get this gear, you'll get this gear, and you'll also get this top housing gear for the differential. So for $5, it's pretty good. You can replace them both at the same time if you need to. In this case, I didn't do any damage to any of my teeth on my diff or onto this bottom gear, but the top portion of the gear I destroyed. So I had a spare gear like this, and I just replaced it, and that was it, and re-greased everything after I cleaned it up, and blah blah blah, and away I went, and now she's back up and running perfect again. So that was awesome. So, well, that's actually garbage. So that's a pretty easy thing to do, to reassemble that. Anyhow, so the radio and receiver are doing really well. Haven't fried a receiver in this thing yet. I do find, however, that what is stupid is the overkill of the cable with the Dean's connector. Now the Litehawk Blast has got much skinnier wires. Uses a JST connector on its batteries as well as on its receiver, and it makes for a lot of good flexibility, and you can get things in there properly. What I find is a real pain in the neck about the Brute, and is that with the Dean's connector and the really fat, unnecessarily fat wires, you end up having to have this wire stuck up on an angle like this and feeding your battery wire through, which you shouldn't have to do, because that is nothing but a pain. So that's something that I think Litehawk should really have changed, and go with the same setup. Now what you could do is order the receiver box for the Blast, and it'll have the JST connector and the skinnier wires on it, because you're only talking about using like max a 15C discharge battery here, maybe 20 at most. Even when you go to a lipo cell, I wouldn't go past a 20C discharge, just because you are dealing with a brush system, and you don't want to throw too much of a discharge rate in, or you can start toasting stuff down the line. So really, this was unnecessary and overkill, and I find that this was actually a downside to the vehicle, because that is a pain in the neck. Otherwise, I mean, you do have a cheap, basic suspension. It's not oil filled whatsoever. But you can add actually oil in through some back portholes on the opposite side of the shocks here. You can squeeze a bit of oil in there, and that'll actually help lubricate the shaft, you know. So I've actually done that a couple times now, and it actually helps, to be honest. Especially when you've got dirt going in there all the time and it can start grinding. At least if you've got oil, it'll keep things clean going in and out, and it'll keep the oil, or sorry, keep the dirt at bay, so when you can blow it off, it blows it off instead of sucking it into the shock. And I'm just using pellet gun oil right now, but you can use 30 weight non-detergent oil too if you want, and it's a lot cheaper. I find the steering servo is actually pretty decent. It could be a little bit quicker, but you know, it's adequate the way it is. Waterproof wise, you could easily get the motor wet and not have to worry. Brushed motors don't care. But the receiver box is going to be an issue. You don't want to get it wet or full of mud, because that's going to start shorting stuff out. So if you're playing in the sand with this machine, make sure it's not wet sand. Make sure it's, you know, fairly dry sand. And then this way you can blow that sand out, because any damp sand that gets in there and the heat of the electronics, it's going to warm it up, and away you go, and you're going to start shorting stuff out. So you're going to want to, you know, watch this type of sand you're going through with this. But otherwise, I mean, you can really beat this thing up, take it through forest trails, you know, take it on the road. Pretty much any terrain this thing will go on. I've had it on the grass, but I really don't recommend any RC to actually run on the grass, because when you're running on the grass, it causes a lot of dig down in the machine, which actually brings your motor temps up sooner and a lot hotter. So, and with brushed motors, you got to try and keep them as cool as you can. You know, you don't want to overheat them too much, or they actually toast. But hey, what's, you know, $8 for a new motor? It's nothing. Eventually you're going to need a new motor, you know, one of these days. So at least they're cheap. Litehawk's got amazing support for the Brute. You can even get metal dog bones, which I actually threw a set in this thing, ran it for a few days. I'm back to the plastic ones again. I'm just kind of, you know, getting a feel for what's going on with how I'm running the car and how I'm abusing it, to see if maybe the metal dog bones were maybe part of the issue why that gear stripped. Because I haven't stripped any gears yet in my buggy, which is actually the clone, or, you know, of the Blast. I haven't stripped any gears in it, and I've actually treated it far worse. And so I'm kind of thinking maybe the metal dog bones, even though they're really nice and they'd be good with a brushless upgrade, they're just a little bit too loose maybe. So when you hit the throttle, it, you know, catches them and, you know, causes back pressure against the teeth. Where maybe these plastic ones, they're a lot more snugger fitting, you know, and less slop. So we're doing some little testings and, you know, seeing what's going on. But all in all, I mean, for a $150 truck, which is about what you're going to pay for this regular price at the source, it's a great buy, you know, especially if you're just getting into RC stuff and you can't afford a full hobby grade machine. This is kind of a half-half, you know, it's a hybrid. It's part toy, part hobby. there are some upgrades like metal dog bones. And if you go to WL Toys, a company called Bang Good actually sells an L202. Well, the parts, when you go for the L959 parts, in there are also an ESC receiver board and brushless motor, which mount right into this machine, and you change your receiver right out. You just rip this one off and slap down the new one, and you don't even have to replace your remote, which is great. Even my WL Toys remote for my L959 is fully compatible with the Litehawk Brute receiver, and I did talk to the company, and you don't have to buy a new transmitter when you buy the brushless upgrade kit. So being that that's true, then that also means that the Litehawk Brute would be able to take advantage of the WL Toys L202 brushless ESC and motor setup and not have to replace your radio, which would be awesome. And so that's kind of cool. So I'm going to definitely be doing a brushless upgrade, but that's going to be closer probably to the springtime anyway. But I'm going to have all of my machines actually up to the brushless set. But anyway, as far as the rest of it goes, I did a few cartwheels today, nasty ones, and I was like really holding my breath, and you know, nothing broke, nothing worked loose or popped out. So it is a very, very durable machine, so quite happy with this one, you know. If you are buying the WL Toys L969, it'll be the exact same vehicle precisely, so you know, you're getting the same machine in the WL, same in the Litehawk Brute, just one says Litehawk Brute on the canopy, you know what I mean? Even the radios are exactly the same, so. But anyway, all in all, hey man, 4 3/4 stars. I would definitely recommend this vehicle. You know, I would also recommend probably a shock upgrade in the future. Maybe to something that's oil-filled shocks would actually give it a little bit more smoother ride. But in the meantime, you do have a lot of different areas to play with. You've got adjustments at the back here. You can bring your arm up even though this one's already down. That's going to change driving characteristics too. Same as on the front, you can bring it up, but you can't change anything on the inside, but on the outside you can. And of course you can change your suspension angle with 2 adjustments only at the front. At the rear you've got 3 adjustment angles total. You know, so you can really do a lot with this thing, so that's why it's kind of really not a toy, because toys aren't modifiable right with, you know, no money into it, you know what I mean? They're not modifiable. There's usually no part support for toy grade, but with a hybrid like this and being able to go into brushless technology, that's a big benefit, you know, so you can do a lot with it. Anyhow, that's about it. If you guys got any questions, comments, feel free to leave them. And I'll do my best I can to answer them. I'm going to keep beating the daylights out of this thing and seeing if I can break something on it other than a gear, and you know, but so far so good, and pretty happy with that. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.